sound.
Welcome back. It's a new season of National Storytellers Night. I want to let you guys know that if you come, most of you are coming and seeing this are obviously doing it at YouTube. But hey, you can be a part of this program too by going over to newwritermedia.com and signing up for the membership, and you can get a link to the Zoom meeting. That way you can be a part of it. You can ask questions and you can join the conversation with me and Brett Akagi. That's my guest today is Brett Akagi from Akagi Media here in Kansas City. He's a video photographer, photojournalist, and uh, covers everything in between. Brett, welcome to National Storytellers Night. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it. Um, yeah, so I as a journalist, and I considered myself always as a photojournalist, whether I was doing stills or video, right? And then, or a visual journalist is what my new iteration of how I explain what I used to do. Right now, I own my own company. It's called Akagi Media, so it's a production company. But I've always, and I will always consider myself a journalist, and I feel pretty lucky to have had a career that has allowed me to cover so many historical and significant things, or just some really, awesome people. And it's opened my eyes up to what the world is really like.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because it's like, I talk about this a lot of times on these meetings that it really is a bug that goes through us. We're not once we're bitten by the photojournalism bug, it's hard to not being ingrained into you. And even when you're going to other jobs, that may not necessarily be doing a photojournalism story, but you bring in what you learn as a storyteller. Is
Yeah,
that
I would say that's definitely true. And even even if I don't have my big cameras with me, right? Whether it's the shoulder mounted one or like what I use now. So I'm shooting with Sony's. So I've got like a Sony A7 IV. So I love it for the photos it takes because it's got a high pixel count. But it's also hybrid, and it shoots up to 4K video, which is awesome. And then I just picked up a second body, a Sony FX30. So I'm really loving that. But even if I'm using my phone just to take photos and stuff, photos or video, I always find that my eye is always drawn to how I would shoot if I was a photojournalist. So, I mean, it always feels good. I will always have that imprinted on me. It's in my DNA as a photojournalist.
well, how did you get started in photojournalism?
It started back in college, and I thought I was going to be a reporter, but I really was drawn to the photography side of it. And when I graduated from Fort Hays State University, one of the first jobs that I got was doing production, commercial production. So I was producing commercials, shooting, writing, and editing commercials. But I always wanted to still do news. So I just did that for a very short time. And I got the call to go to WIBW in Topeka, Kansas to be a TV news photographer. And it kind of took off from there.
What is it about photojournalism that you like the most?
Well, I mean, it's the visual aspect of it, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're shooting stills or you're shooting video, a lot of the same principles apply. And for me, I just like being in the moment as far as like when stuff is happening, to figure out in my head how to get best angles, best coverage, but also to capture moments. And, you know, we come at it from two different ways, from stills to videos, right? So for stills, you're trying to encapsulate that one frozen moment in time where the whole story is unveiled, and that is so tough, right? For video, we're able to piece it out and get different aspects of it, but then that means that the puzzle pieces that we're trying to gather, it's also in our head about like, okay, what do we need to actually tell a good story?
Yeah. Um and yeah, I mean to tell the good story and stuff like that. But now what do you do? What do you look for in a moment? And can you show us some of your like while you're at it, show us some of your photography so that so that people can see like
Well, I want to show you some of my still stuff first.
yeah.
I
That
mean,
would be perfect because I mean we can get started on how do you tell a story? How do you capture the moment with your still
w-
photography?
well, so this one is actually a picture of me. I'm standing on top of a van in downtown Kansas City. This is in the '90s. Oops, and the Kansas City Star had sent out a photographer to follow me for a feature piece that was being written on me. And so he said, "Hey, what can we do to get you in an exciting position?" I said, "Well, I'm covering this story when I'm going to be." I go, "I have no idea how the story's going to go, but it should be crazy, right?" So it was one of the popular rock radio stations in Kansas City said, "Hey, show up in Kansas City, downtown Kansas City, at this address at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to be throwing cash out to the crowd." They said we're going to drop it from the sky, and people had no idea. I mean, we had no idea what was going to happen, and
It sounds like
so
a scene from WKRP almost.
oh god, yeah, yeah, frozen turkeys.
Those,
So
those of you who are, or know anything about WKRP, I'm
yeah,
sure our younger viewers wouldn't know who that
yeah,
is.
just Google or find on YouTube WKRP frozen turkeys, and you'll
Yep,
understand.
yep, yep.
So anyway, so this is me up on top of this roof of this van smiling, and so what happened was the radio station, the 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 popular morning DJ had a bullhorn and he was standing on top of it. So I said, okay, I got to get up there. So I got up on top of this thing and watched him throw cash out. And it was so funny. Just to my right, there were some parked cars. And people were actually in the parked cars like they got stuck. They didn't know what was going to happen. And when they were tossing out cash, some of these people started stepping on that car and broke the windshield. I mean, it
Oh
was
no.
crazy.
Oh
So
no.
anyway, so this is what I love about my job as a journalist or photojournalist is you get like who in their right mind is going to have a job where they get to go to something like this, right, and cover it for their job.
And
So that was cool.
That's the best part of this job is that no, there's no one day that's the same. It's all different. Depends on what you come in and whether you have an assignment or even what you see when you're
Yeah,
out in the public.
yeah, it was pretty funny. So let's go to the next photo.
Okay.
So when I left visual journalism, I worked for a healthcare company, a health insurance company in Kansas City, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City, and I got to do a video and talk to members, some employees of the company. And so Angela here, this is the second camera on this. So I've got one where she's looking directly ahead, and in the background you see a big 65-inch TV screen, and then the lighting, real soft lighting there for her key light, and then you got a nice warm light for her backlight. So um, some of the same principles that I use for video for lighting, I use it in marketing communications, or I would use it in still photography. So here's what the setup looked like from that viewpoint. So I've got a Sony FX6 on a slider that was going back and forth, and you'll notice it's like you see the other rigging in the background, but this is what it takes to get an image like this, right? Is a setup like this. You don't see the stuff behind the scenes, except here I show you a wider shot. So you see a camera on the left where she's looking directly into it, the camera on the right on that slider, and you're going to see how I've got my light set up and how I'm blocking it for different things to get the shot. And you'll see also in the background I've got background lights there, colored lights. And when I was working that on this video, you see the notes that I have there on that little music stand holder, right? And so that way it makes sure that I don't forget things to ask, or I'm keeping track of what's going on. Again, I'm sitting right behind that camera, her main camera. That way she's not looking left or right of the camera, which I can't stand.
Mhm.
Now, so again, looking for those interesting shots. This is for marketing communications and internal photos, but to me, the same principles apply for being a creative photographer, right? Finding
Absolutely.
something interesting in the frame.
Well,
So
I don't think necessarily people are hiring you to be just like that sit and take a photograph type photographer. They're
no,
looking for someone, they're often when they hire people that are photojournalists, they're looking for those photojournalists that have the eye for that too. That
yeah.
have an eye for something that's, you know, maybe doesn't feel so staged, but feels a little bit more, fun and interesting.
Which means then for me, I've got to look for those, interesting, not just the interesting compositions, but look for the moments, right?
Right.
Even as a still photographer.
Hmm.
So here, it was a hybrid shoot, so I'm shooting video and stills, but it's a volunteer event, and our gal here from Blue KC is planting real potatoes. This is how potatoes are grown. They cut them in half,
Hmm.
they bury them, and they cover them up, right? So it's like, okay, I've heard how potatoes are planted and how they're done, but I actually got to see it. But here she is just reacting to someone talking to her. So again, just looking for something there, even though it's a Dutch angle, but I like it. But let's go back to it. So again, I'm looking for not just good lighting, but good composition, and like something that relates to the whole entire environment. It gives it good context. So at this plot, which is in an urban area of Kansas City, it's a urban farm, and they are growing crops to sell at like city markets, or to help feed the people there in the urban areas where there's food deserts. So I walked around looking for, like, okay, I need a cool wide shot. And I saw this tree. I thought, that's interesting how it lays out from the trunk, that curve, and how low it gets. So I walked around the other side and I could see how it was framed up. So it's like, oh, this is just like shooting fish in a barrel. So I just love it. Like, it feels like kind of like you're out in the country, but when you see the background, it's like, oh yeah, we're definitely not in the country. So again, it just lends itself to, I don't know, not just an interesting composition, but like it provides context to what the story is about. And
Well,
then
it's interesting that, to go back to that. It's interesting that we go photographers, we use, whether you're a photojournalist or again a nature photographer, it's the framing, it's the composition, that all plays into the storytelling.
yeah, well, and you see like how many people are there, some of their
Hmm.
equipment. Um, I think unconsciously I was making sure that I didn't cut in the tree limb didn't cut into the roof of the house, that gray house in the background.
Hmm.
Um, I've noticed, like, even when I'm on autopilot, when I'm shooting for composition and stuff like that, like unconsciously, I'm already framing things up in my head about how things should look. And definitely, if I was consciously thinking about it, it's like I would not want that tree to cut into the roof. Now you
Hmm.
see a little bit of the leaves and stuff like that, which is okay. But like you see the main trunk of that tree, the main branch of that tree does not cut into the top of that house.
Yeah.
Um, and I like it because the lighting's cool, and then you get on the dark side of this tree, and it's like not foreshadowing, but it's just nice contrast difference between what you see there. Um, Now, in the next photo, here I am at an executive meeting, and the person I'm taking a photo of, this is Emmanuel. He is a guy that doesn't often talk in meetings or get that animated. So when he started talking, it's like, this is kind of special, right?
Hmm.
So I made sure I got a shot of him doing this, but I love the reactions then from everybody else that's around him. So their eyes pull you into him. I mean, your eyes automatically go to him because he's in focus,
Hmm.
but also unconsciously you've got those lines of people's eyes sitting on either side of him, listening to him talk. So again, looking for the interesting composition.
And
Um,
again, it goes back to the moment too. It helps
yeah,
out with the moment.
yeah. And here we are in the same meeting, but in a different way. This is probably one of my favorite photos of that meeting that I was at because I don't know. There's just something about just I don't know. I just love the composition. I love the
It
look on the faces.
it is. It's the split where the guy perfectly splits them,
Hmm.
and they're two different expressions. It's almost like two different photographs into one.
Yeah, yeah. So again, and this is for marketing communications, but again, you could use this for a newspaper or digital website.
It's absolutely the same concept.
Yeah, and this is when we had that partial eclipse in downtown Kansas in across the United States,
Right.
and then we had some workers come out from Blue KC. So it's like, okay, let's have fun with this. So got this gal looking at it with her safety glasses on to view it. But I love that one, but I love this one too because basically he's just below center frame, so he's got that look space above him, which works because he's looking up at the sun. It just I don't know. There's just like something like he's so awe inspired by what he's looking at, right? It's like,
Hmm.
and it's like in an urban area. So I had a lot of fun taking that one there. And then this is Matt Beasler. So he's a former player for Sporting KC. So, and he's played on the national soccer team. So he's been really good and he's a local guy. Well, he came to the building to sign autographs, and so he's taking a selfie here with the mascot. So again, just looking for those fun little moments, right? Like
Hmm.
you would in sports. And this was the CEO of Blue KC speaking at a women's empowerment event. And again, you see stuffy CEO photos, and I didn't want a stuffy CEO photo. So it was just nice catching Aaron in this expression here talking to a crowd. Now, this one, again, was at Blue KC, and this is with the Black Employee Resources Group. And they were having a pretty serious conversation, uh, and I wanted to like show even in this room how packed it was. So I'm standing at the very back of the room, on top of a chair, getting this shot of Michael leading the discussion. So, you know, in that very first shot, I was on top of a van, and in this shot, I'm on top of a chair. So, as a photojournalist or as just a visual photographer or videographer or whatever, you got to get you got to try to get the angles that no one else is going to get or thinks about, right? I mean, I could shoot all day just standing on my feet, but really being this elevated really shows how many people are in that room.
Well, and
And then
I remember going back, going to in my journalism schools, telling our photographers, our teachers telling us, get up, get down, get low, get left, right, go for, you know,
yeah.
really
It,
define that angle.
yeah, and I'm the same way because for me, I'm so short, right? 5'5", and I've been in the Chiefs locker rooms, Royals locker rooms, Vikings locker rooms, Twins locker rooms, and especially for football, when you're doing post game interviews and there's a lot of cameras there, you've got to learn to be able to work your way into a position so that you're not getting shut out. And again, if I'm 5'5" and the photographers around me are like at least 6 foot tall, if I am behind them, I'm never going to get the
Hmm.
shot of the interview, you know, at a locker. So I've got to be able to work myself into the right position to get the best angles. So here at the same meeting, again, I'm trying to figure out like what's important. And what's important is that quote. Okay. So I made sure that I captured that quote with Michael pointing to it, right?
Mhm.
So again, you've got that interest in the action is leading from Michael to that quote. So it's just you got to figure out and pick your focal points when you're doing anything, video or stills. And there he is, where he's actually having a good time. He's having people raise their hand, asking him about, "Have you ever felt this way?" And if you see just below his arm, you see that gal, and even though she's out of focus, you see her smiling, looking back and smiling. Now, I should have grabbed another shot of her in focus with the same pose. You know, I could have racked that really, really quick because I think that would have been good and telling and just as telling. And here's just a group shot. This is my AAPI employee resource group. We had a celebration celebrating Lunar New Year, and so we were serving a bunch of food. And I said, "Oh, hey, let's get a group shot." And they were just being fun. And you know, sometimes it is about a dog and pony show and getting the group shots. Um, and then I was at a trombone workshop where I'm getting this is practice. So this is how I'm able to get some of these photos, um, walking around and getting interesting angles without worrying about the audience. But you know, it's just you got to figure out how to walk around, get some cool shots. I took probably 20 shots of this reflection from different angles, and this just worked out to be the best one. This was a little bit wider, so I cropped it, but I just love how I just it's a cool looking reflection shot, right? Because you can
Absolutely.
see everything you know it's about, right? And then
Absolutely.
and then this kid here, so there's you know he's got that really strong stage light, you know, it's pounding him hard on his back right side, and it's hitting his sheet music, and his sheet music's got this beautiful glow, right? And you look at like how it just bathes his face. And even though it's hotter on that back right side, it's like I don't know. There's just something about it because you can see that specular highlight, just the reflection of the sheet music in his eyes, and just that look on his face. Um, it just worked out nice. So again, you just got to look. You got to look for things, anticipate things, but sometimes you get surprised about what you see. So you just got to just be able to capture it at the right time. this is this is at a holiday party at Blue KC, and this guy was dressed up like Uncle as Uncle Eddie. They're all decorating their cubicles and stuff, and so he just had this funny pose. And if you look at the cup he's got, it's the Marley Moose holiday glass, drinking some eggnog. And this crazy guy decided to dress his cubicle up. He had a Christmas tree farm. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So yeah, but dude, I mean, it's total great vibe, and it smelled like evergreens there, so it was really really cool. Now, and I'm finishing up the photos here. So at work, uh, a bunch of my coworkers were laid off. Okay, and I was looking through their headshots on LinkedIn. I said, "Hey, let me help you out.
Mhm.
Let me find a location and let's do some headshots. Let's do some stills." And they said, "Okay." So these are the headshots that I took of my former coworkers, and it's the same, you know, like what I did with Angela. I got a nice key light and a backlight, right? So you see the specular highlights in their eyes, the reflection of the light, right? And then you see the soft backlight kicking them on the head just to add some separation and just some nice smiles and stuff. Just they worked out great. This one I did Claudia at her house, but again, just I don't know, just helping them out. And because here's the deal, I was also part of that layoff. Okay, there was
Uh-huh.
200 of us, and I know the importance of like a good headshot. And so I had to do my own headshot at the house. Again, these are all hot lights that I'm using. So I've got actually three lights on here. So the key on the right side of my face, I got a nice warmer fill on the left side, and I've got a nice soft backlight there to highlight what I've got. And I look like I know what I'm doing. And then this is just with the girls when we finished up uh, there at the location. So it was a lot of fun. But for me, I really it's not just about what I do for my job. Um, I feel like if I've got skills and I can help out an organization or people, you know, and it could be, oh, I need to go out and tell a story, or hey, I need to go out and do headshots. You know, I feel compelled to do that because, you know, again, I'm in that position right now,
Mhm.
right? And that's why I had to form my own production company.
Mhm. And there's a lot of people
Uh,
that go into that with a lot of papers and newspaper and not just papers, but news agencies laying off a lot of photographers and a lot of journalists. You have to
yeah.
find, and that's kind of an interesting thing too. Is like, how do you move on from a not necessarily move on, but how do you survive after that layoff? How do you survive that?
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, it's tough. Um, so luckily, right now we've been paid up on the mortgage so far. But you know, it would sure would be nice to have a regular paycheck and full time benefits, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm hustling. So I didn't do those headshots to do this, but here's what's happened as a result. Now I'm able to put those headshots on my website and say, hey, I do headshots, right? And
Right.
I know what to charge for them now. And so I'm working with a local company to say they've got some branch offices around here. And I've talked to a person and I said, hey, I can do your guys' headshots. I go, just let me know. It's like, okay, let me talk to my district manager and we'll see if we can't get it in. And so if we can work something out, I'll be able to like, you know, charge something, yeah, not something. I'll be able to charge what my rate is while bringing in a whole bunch of people. But it's good practice for me. I'm able to do things, and because I've used when I was a Canon guy, I was running two 580 Series 2 Mark II flashes, so I could do, you know, if you've used Canon, you know what it can do. They're awesome flashes. So I went ahead and bought, because it was on sale, the Westcott FJ 400 two light wireless strobes with a transmitter that I can add on there. And so now, and I've been practicing in my basement. Okay, what's my setup? Because I've got like soft boxes now, and I can do some different things. And because of all the lighting that I've done as a videographer, in what I've done before as a still photographer, shooting like I documented a wedding um, before, during, and after. I like I just have those skills, and so now that's just another thing that I can add to not just my resume, but but just another thing I can do to help raise money.
Well, and it's like
So
it's a toolbox too. You know, you
yeah,
oh, and it's always it's really interesting to see what skills that you have as a photojournalist can actually translate to other areas because as photojournalists we do everything anyway. We do portraits, we do sports, we do um you know we have to hustle stuff. Um and so I mean it's I think that's what a lot of people, if people get to see this when they're that are not necessarily in the photojournalism field, there's a lot that goes into this field. There's a lot more than just showing up and taking a photograph. It's a lot of experience. And for the freelancers that have to do that themselves and have to hustle to be able to get those jobs.
yeah. Well, and I'm finding that, I mean, you know, we're not dumb. We see what's
Mm-mm.
been going on in the industry, especially for still photographers. How just a bunch of them are getting laid off because, you know, reporters can use their smartphones. Like, going, God,
But and
and
then it
yes,
cracks me up because
can they do it? Yes, they can. And can you use a smartphone to actually take a great picture or be on New York Times?
oh,
Yes, because
absolutely.
yes,
It's not the equipment, it's the photographer.
yeah, yes.
You know,
And so but it's cutting into the livelihoods of the
it
still
is.
photographers.
It
Um,
is.
but I would tell you, like for me, what's helpful is that I've got a background in still photography and videography, so I'm able to like use do a lot of different things. So for still photographers out there who are watching this, if you haven't done video, you need to do video. I'm just I mean, there's just you got to go do video. And it's like, well, how do I go do video? It's like, well, I mean, there's workshops out there that the MPPA puts on.
Mhm.
You can watch some YouTube videos, but really you need to find someone who's a good visual storyteller and to help you out or mentor you and stuff and to
Well,
learn. But the biggest thing is to try.
I think the thing that people do is it's fear. And, really,
Oh, I
it's the same thing that we do whether we're still or video. I mean, having that mindset of like we were talking about when you were getting up and down from getting the wide angle shots.
yeah.
It's the same thing. A lot of the same
Oh,
concepts.
and I get it, but like I would just say, hey, Caroline, we got someone on here.
Yeah, we got Caroline in here.
Hi,
Caroline, where are you
Brett.
from?
I live in Connecticut. You and I met a billion years ago at a an MPPA thing. You and I, do you remember John? Oh God, what is John? JR,
Oh,
JR,
John, yeah, JR Man.
JR Man. Yes. You and I, we have that's our common friend. I used to see you at the annual conventions.
Yes. Oh my
So,
gosh.
so we met. And anyway, so one of the things that I was going to suggest, I'm a independent picture editor now, and I've worked with a lot of independent photographers. I left newspapers, moved to Washington because I'm from New England, and started working on the digital side of companies like Discovery and Nat Geo. And I also worked for a custom publishing agency, and that was a whole new realm of magazines that are basically member benefit magazines. So,
Okay.
kind of like your AARP magazine, or you are the Aspen Institute, and you've got your communications department, but you only put out a magazine 3 or 4 times a year. So, you hire out to a custom publishing company, which is what we were.
Oh,
And also living in DC, there are parallel universes of the government, so that there's military people, but there's also the government folks and law offices. So there are photographers in DC who make their living doing headshots for law offices. So if
yeah,
that's what you do, then and you know a lawyer, you might that's a sector to consider,
yeah.
as that part of as that sort of thing, or maybe nonprofits. Or the problem with nonprofits is that they all get paid, but they don't want to pay for the photography.
No.
I think
Or not unless they can get a grant or something like that, or they just don't
Right.
pay much, right?
Right. It's really unfortunate. But there are different sectors that I learned about when I moved to DC that are in most major locales
Yeah.
or private
That
schools.
have money, that have budget.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I was just talking to a friend of mine, one of my clients. She does a lot of business with private schools. Now, she's based outside DC, and you have money. And so you have people who send their children to private schools. But, lots of cities have money. Where are
Yeah.
you still in Denver? Were you in Denver?
No, I'm in Kansas City.
You're in
So
Kansas
yeah,
City. Okay.
they have money. It's not like St. Louis or Minneapolis, but they've got money out here. So
Exactly. There's got to be
yeah.
some private schools. And anywho, I'm starting to kick into my picture. Like, how can we get this photographer paid?
That's right. Yeah, network. Well, but I tell you, it's like it sucks at times because it's like, okay, I've got to do this. it's volunteer work, but like my volunteer work is leading into other things. And so that's what I'm hoping for. And depending on who you volunteer for, if you're running it with people that are high rollers in your city,
Yes.
and they love what you do, I mean, people will remember you. So,
Sure. But but you just want to, as you know, you got to remember the business side of it. And there are horror stories everywhere. My husband is a photographer. He was doing a project with a nonprofit, and he wanted a small fee for the work that he was doing for a summer. And they would assignment creep, they would ask him to do extra stuff. And at the annual meeting, now normally, if you're photographing an annual meeting, that is big money because they're making an annual report. And at this meeting, the money people said, well, we've got $100,000 extra dollars and we're going to need to make it go away in order for us to maintain our nonprofit status. And my husband said, okay, you can send some of that in my direction. But the president and then the vice president of that organization were just way too concerned with feathering their own nest. So it's, you've got it's really unfortunate because they could certainly have paid for the photography that they turned around and used in their marketing. And then they were able to raise the money, raise lots of money. But it's, you just have to be careful of who you're volunteering for, obviously, and when to cut it off. Because if they're abusing you, then that's not worth your time either.
Well, go ahead, Doug.
Well, and I also think that you look at people and I mean maybe different in DC that they may be more used to some of these nonprofits, but a lot of nonprofits, they're not run by people who know anything about what goes into into like photography and marketing, that they're thinking, well, hey, not even thinking like how much photography costs. And even, many of them think it's, you go to Expressly Portraits or a portrait studio on the corner and get a photograph and it's $20 a page. They're not understanding that there's more that goes into
Yes, that's true. And that is one of the things about some of the nonprofits. It helps to work with a bigger one in a bigger city if you can. But, it is difficult. And a lot of journalists have big hearts and they want to help with certain causes. But other people are getting paid. And I always lean toward get paid to do, for something, whether it's your travel or, I've got one client who goes down to Central America and they pay his plane ticket. They don't pay him anything, but they pay his plane ticket and his food and lodging while he's there. Okay. And then they turn around and use all of that for marketing, which, he's at a point in his career that he's willing to do that because he has enough income in other places. But it just is, the nonprofit thing it just makes me crazy because a lot of them could easily find the money because half of them are all making six figures. Mm-hmm. So, it's, anyway, I don't mean to go down that road, but a suggestion of, parallel sectors of the economy that exist in most major cities in the country.
But this is also a good look into what it's like to be a freelance photographer. Mm-hmm. It's not all like, oh, they're New York Times is just going to give me a photo shoot.
Oh no,
when you're living in in the middle of America that is nowhere near any of that stuff.
Well, and that's one of the things that you were talking about, Brett, is that you have a wide range of your expertise, and you will need to leverage that. And you have at different places where you've worked and you've used different portions of your skills. But that's one of the things about being an independent. You've got to have a variety of clients, a variety of sectors, and not all education, not all journalism, not all whatever it is. You have to be widespread because there will be dips, and or if it's seasonal stuff. Like I have one friend who he's the contract photographer for a summer music place, which is great in the summer, but he's not doing very much for 6 months. He's not doing anything for them for 6 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So he's gotta have a wide variety of clients.
Yeah. And that includes, so I talk about being a still photographer, but also being a videographer, but then also editing video. So I've already helped out a friend who owns his own production company. He's a co-owner out in Vegas, and I've done some work for him previously. Like, because it's the internet, we can get files, even big files, fairly fast, and I can edit for him, and I might have some stuff coming up there. So again, and now with remote work, people are getting laid off left and right in the media industry. It doesn't matter what it is, that there's going to be more jobs out there like that. So I think that helps out a lot. I would just say, like, the main thing that I always get asked is, like, do you have a website? For the longest time, I didn't. So finally I've got one up, and I make sure that I'm trying to hit as many different areas and stuff. I'll show you a video story. This is when I was at KCTV5. So this is after I left Care TV. So if you guys ever look into my background, while I was at Care, I was director of photography, and we won 4 Station of the Year awards, MPPA Station of the Year awards. We've had 4 MPPA Photographer of the Years, and I am a runner-up Photographer of the Year. So you can tell visual journalism is like huge for us, right? So when I left and then came back to Kansas City, I was able to tap into what I learned as far as at Care. So this story that you're going to see, and I'll bring it up right now, I'll do the share here real quick, is about a father who decided, about a guy who decided to do something after his daughter overdosed on heroin.
Oh, I love this episode. I love this story.
Thinking there's no way this is my baby. This is just more than anyone should have to take.
Jessica Williams lost her battle to heroin inside this bedroom.
As strong and stubborn, as smart as Jessica was, heroin was stronger.
Jessica's mom was notified at work.
They all had tears in their eyes. So I just slid down the wall, and I just sat there, and I just kept saying no.
Most families keep addictions and grief behind closed doors, but the Williams took it outside.
I was proud of it.
Anyone who drives down Broadway in Sedalia sees this sign.
It makes the point. She died here, February 10th, 2016.
Heroin is bad, and everyone needs to know how bad it is.
Literally, you can buy a hit of heroin cheaper than you can buy a 6-pack of beers.
Jessica was an excellent student. Here's her senior photos. She went to college and planned on law school. Her parents never dreamed heroin would destroy their youngest daughter.
Is she going to be in jail? Is she going to be dead? I never knew when I would get a phone call. Every time my phone rang, it was like I didn't even want to answer it.
This family tried everything. 3 rounds of rehab, constant counseling, matching tattoos of a compass to remind Jessica to keep going in the right direction. But in the end, heroin destroyed everything.
I don't want any parent to ever feel this hurt. It's an abyss you can't climb out of.
Okay, so because of my experience at Care, I was able to think through before we started doing that interview about where we were going to do the interview and how to approach it. So we were originally going to do it downstairs where his former wife was going to be later on. And I just turned to the reporter. I told Angie, I go, hey, don't freak out, but I'm going to ask, because he told us he found her up in the bedroom when she had OD'd. And I said, I'm going to ask him to see if we can't do that interview up in her bedroom.
Mm.
And she kind of looked at me like, what? And like, I go, trust me. I go, I think he's going to say yes. I could just tell by the way I mean, the guy put a giant sign about his daughter overdosing at the house in his front yard. I don't think he's going to have a problem doing an interview talking about his daughter in the bedroom where he found her. So, so I just, I wasn't being an ass about it. I just said, I know how tough this is, especially when you talk about how you found Jessica up in bed, after she OD'd. I go, I've already done a story, I said when I was up in the Twin Cities about when a young teen boy committed suicide, and his mom and dad went to go show us his bedroom, or actually show the site in the barn where he hung himself, but also the bedroom where all of his hopes and dreams were, And I said, we shot part of the video there and then part of the video up in the barn. I go, it might be too much to ask, but would you mind doing the interview up in Jessica's bedroom? He goes, no, let's go do it. And Angie was like surprised. But again, it's because I had that experience. And I would say a little bit of wisdom to know how people are in those situations, but also to make sure that I was human, right? Not to push him and not to be crass or unfeeling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of getting those things. And I know for photographers, they might want to take a portrait shot up there, right? A contextual portrait shot of dad up in the bedroom. So it's not unlike something that they would ask for. So, you got to figure out like what's going to make those stories better. So with that video, it was like, they were amazing parents to be able to talk about it, but they also understood that if they didn't talk about it, that again, losing their daughter Jessica was going to get worse if they didn't talk about it, mm-hmm. because there was such a problem in Sedalia, Missouri, of all places, right? Where they have the Missouri State Fair. And for him to talk about how it was easier to get a hit of heroin, it was cheaper than buying a 6-pack of beer. I was like going, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
That is some crazy, crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, just visually, it's the visual elements, it's the audio that goes with it. It is the way you light things. It's the way you compose the interviews, the context that you put it in there. It's the editing, all those things. Like you saw the photos of Jessica and you saw the light, it dipped from a bright to like dark. And all I did was take my light. Here's a photo. And all I did was take my light and did a light sweep. Right. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to do something in camera kind of cool and special that would go along with what was going on. I didn't know exactly what she was going to write, but I anticipated that, I would use that shot, and I ended up doing it. So just a lot of thinking when you're doing the video aspect of it. So I show that not to scare the crap out of people, especially still photographers who've never done video, but I show it to them to help them understand. It's like, to me, not anyone, you can do it. It's just, you've got to push yourself to take that first step. And then once you take that first step, then you got to take the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. And so, Doug, you asked, there's the 5 questions. So I'll answer one right now. It's like, what is it? What is one of the sayings that you have? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you again at the end, but it's okay to answer it now. But what quote, saying, or thought that goes through your head that keeps you motivated during an assignment?
So that would be adapt, overcome, persevere. So when I teach at workshops now, or I mentor students or professionals, that is a mantra that I just pound into their head, and I have them write it down. Adapt, overcome, persevere. And you've got to think of it like this. Even when you've got stories where you have perfect conditions, right? Everything's laid out for you to hit a home run. You're going to encounter something that's going to throw it off. So then it's up to you to figure out how to work your way around it. If you use that mantra, especially if you're learning something new, adapt, overcome, persevere, that will help you get past that. You can always have fear, but to push yourself and give yourself enough bravery and enough courage to keep pushing past that, learn from your mistakes, and keep going to get better and to become successful.
Well, being brave is going past what you fear.
Yep.
You know, and it goes
Definitely
to the perseverance. It's you might be afraid, but you have to have the perseverance to keep going and keep doing it. And one of the questions that I always ask is, I've had a couple of photographers come in with a sad story such as this, and it affects everybody. Like, I think it affects you as a photographer. It affects and one of the things I've kind of started exploring in this, and I so want to do a special meeting on this, is the secondary trauma and the secondary effects that when you're having to do these sad stories, these stories that have, like, there's a sad element to it. Mm-hmm. How do you do that, and how do you go on from after that?
Well, I mean, I've covered my share of sad stories, deaths, tragic homicides. There's been 3 instances, and all in Kansas City, of homicides. And at these 3 events, family members showed up, and I was there to record it. And I recorded it, like, going, holy cow. The first time was in the 90s. Pulled up to this site, and there's a dead teenage boy laying in the street, and they couldn't move him because crime scene hadn't got there yet. So they had a lot of work to do. In the meantime, while we're waiting, mom rolls up.
Oh man,
not
good.
Yeah, that hearing her cry and wail, like it tears you up, right? But I recorded it, and I remember having that conversation in my head, like, what the F are you doing? You shouldn't be doing this. You're intruding on her, on what she's doing. And then the other side of me was going, you're a journalist. This is what happens. You need to record this. So we recorded it, got the scene, we did the story. And it was in the 90s. Had it been on social media, whatever, it would have, like, blown up even more. But it blew up. And the next morning, the assignment desk got a call from the mom. And when I heard that, I going, oh, what's going to happen? Well, the mom said, because she saw it, and she said, I want you to send a reporter over to my house, and I want to do an interview, because I want people, they saw my pain, but I want people to know exactly what I'm feeling. Okay. So as a journalist, I did my job. I felt like crap when I did it, but then because I did my job and recorded mom going through the worst day ever in her entire life, it made a difference. I think it made a difference. But I had to do it again later on before I left for the Twin Cities. Another body found, sister showed up. And then later when I was at KCTV5, son was rolling down the highway. They got into a gun battle. He dies in the car, and then the mom's there. It's like going, holy cow. It was horrible. So you asked, Doug, it's like, does that leave basically a psychological residue on you in what you do? I would say yes. And for journalists who do that a lot, they become hardened to it, which is unfortunate, right? Um, for me, I guess I looked at it pragmatically, as far as like it gave me a window into how the world works, and I think it made me it hurt to be even around that, right? And to cover it as part of my job, but it helped me understand like the bad things that can happen in the world and why we need people, laws, or whatever it is to help make things better.
Sorry, that's my
Like, that's
All
okay.
right.
And there, go ahead. She's silence yourself. There's a consequence for the ills of society, and I saw 3 instances where it was like at its worst, you know. So,
And
so
it's definitely like, it the decision on whether to pick up a camera and it's probably at the worst of their lives, the worst moment of their lives. And it's like one of the things that we get criticized as photojournalists of is being the bloodsuckers just after the story. And which is not the case. Many times, yeah, you do have the hardened journalists that can roll up onto a crime scene, take a picture, and that's it. But there's also a lot of us that are like, it's like, how do you decide? What makes you decide to pick that up? I think a lot of journalists go through the same thing that you went through with the first person that you talked about. Like, God, I feel like shit taking a picture of this mom in the worst possible moment. But it's also getting that moment that helps tell the story of what's going on.
yeah, definitely. So before we go, I want to share one more video. So I want to show you something fun and what I've been able to do in marketing communication. So we were supposed to do videos on mocktail recipes, and so this is the fun part of being creative. So, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do this, but it just shows you, like, even a journalist, a visual journalist can do this, can do fun stuff like that. And like, I had an idea about working with some strobe LED lights using my new camera, and then doing like a concept video. Like it's a badass looking video, and so I've got some more tweaks to do to it, but it makes you look like holy cow, like it's something like from a movie or something like that. So again, it's that creative mind, that creative visual mind, to go along with audio and everything else to like make it work. So just there's so many opportunities for us, especially if you're a freelancer doing video or stills or both, in my case. But you got to be willing to push yourself to get to a different creative level, push yourself to be better, push yourself just for even the sake of being creative, is to do something and have fun. That video that you saw, like, it incorporated a lot of different things. right? Lighting, of course, composition, and just like, okay, how am I going to put this together in my edit, so with it, and then make it look like basically like something that you would see in a food magazine, right? It had that feel when you look at it. It's like, damn, that looks good. I want to try that recipe. I don't know what it is, but I want to try that recipe, right? So again, you just got to look at things to make it pop off the screen.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and being kind of agile in the things that you need to do. I got one last before I get to my final five. I got one more question that I actually want to ask is, being a still photographer and a videographer, and often having to do both at the same assignment. How do you pick the time to when to take a still as opposed to taking a video?
It's that's tough because it's different for every shoot, and so I just look for opportunities where, if I'm not gathering sound and it looks like a good still, I'll just snap a few pictures and stuff. Now I can do frame grabs. That doesn't always work. Or, I'll pull out my smartphone and shoot with it too. But like, I know that on a few assignments where I'm supposed to do both, I know that I don't do both as well as if I'm concentrating on one thing. So just know that going in. It's like, you can do both, but I'm going to tell you, if you're doing both on one assignment, you're not, unless it's an assignment that spans weeks or months, you're not going to get everything that you want. You're just not. So you just got to learn to be okay with that.
Well, Brett, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the new season of National Storytellers Night. Before we go, how can let's get this out there. How can people find you?
So I have my website, Akagi Media, AKAGI media.com, or they can find me on Instagram, Brett Akagi, all one word, BRETT, AKAGI. And they can message me there or look at my work on the Akagi Media website. And they can also, I've got my contact information there too.
Okay, now we're going to go on to the final five questions, and you already answered one. I'm going to ask it again, but just because it helps me keep in step with this stuff. But what is your favorite saying or quote that helps you stay motivated on an assignment?
It's my own mantra, and it's one of my favorite mantras, and that is adapt, overcome, persevere. I keep that in mind always, not just at work, but in life, because in work and in life, nothing is ever going to be perfect, and we're always going to encounter problems. So if you're always a victim and you're going to let things happen to you, that's a pretty tough life. But if you're of the mindset, use the mantra, adapt, overcome, persevere. Even if you don't persevere, at least psychologically, you're going to feel better about it because you actually try to do something about it.
What is your favorite thing to hear?
It changed from yesterday when I was thinking about it. So my favorite thing to hear would be the laughter from my family and my friends. That to know that they're joyful and are happy in the moment, that means the world to me.
What is your favorite thing to see?
And that would be the same thing, to see my friends and my family laughing and having a good time. There's just, going into this election season and just everything else, Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, social unrest, social injustice, there's just a lot of crap in the world. And so being able to share those moments with your friends and family is important. It's always been important, but I think it's especially important now.
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word, and I'm not going to say it because I know it's going to live on YouTube. It starts with an F and ends with a CK. You know, my dad said it a lot. My mom didn't. My mom, in fact, got mad at me when I would say that word. But it's not like I say it a lot, but I've used it a few times here in the last 2 or 3 months.
You know, there's really nothing like a good, well-placed square word.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, especially if you don't do it all the time. That one time when you like, you know,
Yeah.
it hits at home.
Yeah.
I catch my kids doing that. I'm like, no, you can't do that. But
Yeah, you can't say that.
you
Your
can't
dad
say
can.
that. But you know, that one time that you're like, shit.
Yeah.
But you know, there's nothing wrong with a curse word from time to time. Just don't say it. You know, I tell my
Yeah.
kids, don't say it all the time. Learn what it means, and and then you're intelligent. Then when you're using it in the right context, then like that, it's not. It goes from being like just noise to an exclamation mark.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
that's the way I always see that type of stuff. So the last question that I love to end uh, these meetings with is, uh, if you believe in heaven, what would it look like to you?
So heaven is I don't see pearly gates. I see just waking up and being surrounded by my family and friends who I've missed dearly all these years. And we're just going to have an awesome meal and a great party and enjoy each other's company and catch up.
Well, I want to thank Brett. I want to thank you for being a part of this the meeting today. You know, I want to thank Caroline for coming on and being a part of it as well. And you know, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, hey, please remember to like, share, subscribe to this channel, and you know, also when you go down, scroll down a little bit, leave a comment. It helps this grow, and you know, I'd love to see more and more photographers really get something out of this, and even the general audience. Everybody can learn from this. Also, if you want to be a part, if you want to do like what Caroline did today, head over to newwritermedia.com and sign up to be a member. That is the only way you're going to get a link to the meeting. And when we get full meetings, we get a lot of questions, and it's so much more fun. Besides, if you come on, we always have a little after conversation, a little bit before conversation. So you want to be a part of that. That's a great marketing or great place to network. But so for all of us here at for all of us here at National Storytellers Night, have a good night, and remember, there's no such thing as a bad bull, just a bad bullfighter. Thank you. Good night.
Check this out.